Republican Congressman Keith Self of McKinney, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So let's talk about the debt relief and the budget, a bill that the House Republicans passed last week with no Democrats. And I'm wondering, why do you think it's so important? You were among those who supported it. Why was it important for you?
We've got to get this debt ceiling debate started because Janet Yellen has already said that she's using extraordinary measures. So we've got to get the negotiations started. And we put a very strong package on the table. And now it's time for the Senate to take it up. And it's time, frankly, for the president to start negotiating and with the House and the Senate for his desires.
I spoke with Congressman Colin Allred today, a Democrat from Richardson, and he was saying they should be separate issues as far as raising the debt ceiling and then negotiating on the budget. What do you say? And President Biden has said he's not going to negotiate.
Well, President Biden has to negotiate. He's said we would, in the past, that we would negotiate, and he must negotiate. Because the House is ready to raise the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion with substantial cuts over the next 10 years. In fact, the first year cuts of about $415 billion were very important to me because this is when we set what's going to happen for the next 10 years. The budget is a separate issue altogether. This is the trajectory of this nation for the next decade.
And when I talked to Congressman Allred, he said, well, the Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act. How do you respond to that?
Well, that was the Inflation Expansion Act. A lot of what we have in our debt ceiling relief bill is to roll back, to have rescissions for many of that spending, much of that spending that hasn't been done yet, because the $1.7 trillion, that was insane. So a lot of what we have in our bill will undo a lot of the damage to the American taxpayer that was in that bill.
Last week, House Republicans held a news conference to announce that they will be voting on a new bill as far as border security, illegal immigration during the week of May 11th, same time Title 42 is set to end. And do you support this bill? And what do you think is the most effective provisions about it?
Well, there is no bill yet because two different committees are working on this bill. The Judiciary Committee and the Homeland Security Committee are working to meld together one bill. But I think there's going to be some very strong provisions in it. And one of them is the Migrant Protection Protocol, which is basically Title 42 in a different name, in a different form. But that is what we need to be about. We need to be strengthening the border. Frankly, this bill could do nothing as long as the Biden administration would simply enforce the laws that are already on the books. But the Republicans are going to have a strong bill that will encourage the president to do his duty on the border and protect this sovereign nation.
And now that it starts in the House, and we may be able to predict how it's going to go, perhaps on party lines, but then it goes to the Senate, and so the Senate is controlled by Democrats. So with the way the Congress is set up now, Republicans in the majority in the House, the Democrats in the majority in the Senate with the Democratic White House, that changes the whole dynamic on how legislation gets started and gets worked on. No?
Not really. This is the way government works. This House passes its bill, the Senate passes its bill, and then there's a committee hearing between the two to negotiate out exactly what we're going to pass and send to the president. If we cannot reach an agreement, or if the president vetoes it, it doesn't become law. But I've said all along, well before I took office, that this is the one issue that I think Americans will want us to find some stronger enforcement on, the border, because now there are no counties, there are no states that are not border counties and states. It's affecting the entire nation. And I think this is the one issue where the Democrats had better get on board with a stronger border enforcement, or they may find another job here in a couple of years.
And I should have followed up my question with the statement, it's different than the past 2 years in which Democrats controlled essentially all three, the executive branch and both Congresses. And so but it changes the dynamic politically on what is able to get through and what does not get through.
Absolutely. Now that we have the Republicans in charge of the House, you're going to see common sense, reasonable, consistent bills come out that protect our nation, that protect our taxpayers, that have border security, border enforcement, strong national defense, and a strong economy. So, absolutely. It does change the dynamic now that the Republicans have the majority in the House.
You sent 2 letters to President Biden late last week. One of them was on the EPA's new tailpipe emissions rule. Why did you write it? What did you say? And what is the biggest concern to you about it?
Well, the rules that I think they went into effect today, uh, are impossible. You're not going to have 67% of all sedan, light cars, SUVs that are sold in 2030 or 2032 to be electrified. The grid won't stand for it. The grid is not there. The battery improvements that they keep talking about are not there yet. The $12,000 that the administration says they're going to save over the life of every vehicle is fantasy. Because the batteries, when you replace them, are in the tens of thousands of dollars to begin with. So this is impossible. The phrase that I use often is they are going to be mugged by reality because we simply cannot electrify a major portion of our vehicle fleet today without some sort of fuel. And frankly, the batteries that are in these cars don't produce electricity. They simply store electricity, the majority of which was produced by fossil fuels. So this is a mission impossible, if you will.
What impact do these rules have on not only the public, but the car companies who have to change over? And that we've seen obviously an increase in production and research and development of battery electric vehicles, but at the same time they're still manufacturing uh, cars with with engines in them, if you will.
Well,
And so, I mean, I'm wondering, does this force the marketplace to change?
well, that's what they want. They want to weaponize the federal government again. They want to force people to make choices that are not in their best interest. They want to force more pollution on the planet by the battery, the minerals that are needed for the batteries, and the terribly polluting process that goes into that. They want to force that this is simply a continuation of the war on fossil fuels. But again, they're going to be mugged by reality. You simply can't do this. I mean, it's impossible, the goals that they are setting. And I think that the market will eventually realize that and come to grips with the reality that we are going to have fossil fuels to include our vehicles for a long time.
And the other letter that you wrote was about this proposed change with regards to mortgages and those who have mortgages. I believe it's over $400,000. People who have a higher credit score will have to pay a fee to help subsidize folks who have a lower credit score.
That's exactly right. Once again, this is the weaponization of the federal government, the redistribution of wealth. People work all of their lives to get good credit scores. And now they're going to be punished by subsidizing those people who have not yet been able to have good credit. So this is turning the market upside down on its head. This is a horrible move. I think that 27 states have already written letters to the Biden administration saying this is a disastrous policy. This is almost to the point of pure socialism in the mortgage industry.
So to your point, it's more of just the practice of it is wrong. Not so much that the fact that these folks, if they've got a $400,000 mortgage, can't afford it.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
the fee.
This is simply another drip. Jack, I think that the Biden administration is trying to overwhelm the American public by coming out with executive order after executive order after executive order, all weaponizing the federal government against the taxpayer to redistribute wealth, to force us to make choices such as buying an EV car, and on and on. This is they are swarming us, to use the drone analogy that we hear so much about in the news today. This is a swarm of executive orders that are trying to overwhelm the American public. They're all disastrous and they all need to be stopped.
And my last question to you is about the Chips and Sciences Act. I know you weren't in Congress just yet when that was voted on, but how would you have voted on that?
I don't know, because I really haven't seen the internal workings of the bill. But I will tell you that chips themselves, 92% of the advanced chips in the world come out of Taiwan. This is a national security issue. And frankly, a local car dealer told me one day that the low-end cars have 300 chips in them. Higher-end cars could have 500 chips in them. So with 92% of the advanced chips in Taiwan, this is a national security issue that we need to be moving advanced chip production out of Taiwan into safer climes such as Texas, which the governor is trying to do.
And there have been a number of companies who have, since the law passed, and some actually before it, committed to building new facilities, several up in Sherman, up the road from your district, and or may even include parts of your district, and also here in our area too.
Yes, and it is a very serious situation, and I think companies know that. But it takes a while to build a plant, to get financing, because you're talking about billions of dollars. So this is going to take a while. So in the meantime, we need to be deterring China in their efforts and their desire to overwhelm Taiwan and to take Taiwan back. Because if that happens, that would be a very, very, very serious situation for the entire world. That's unthinkable.
Congressman Keith Self, Republican from McKinney, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.